It is time once again for another episode of the Apple Circle podcast. That's right. It's that time of the week. We are back with the latest Apple news, the latest leaks, the latest rumors. We are here to give our opinions on everything in the world of Apple. And I know, Matt, we got a lot of ground to cover today, and we've got a lot of opinions, a lot of things to talk about. But first, of course, we have a couple of questions we're going to get to. But if you want to submit your own question, now is the time. You can text us at our Apple Circle hotline, or you can call us to leave us a voicemail. The number is 949-354-3508. Give us a text or a call. Let us know if you have a question, you have a comment, some feedback. We'd love to wear it. Even if you hate the show, let us know. We'll take constructive criticism. Exactly. Or you could leave a comment on the YouTube channel. That is just the Apple Circle podcast channel. You can leave us a review on iTunes. You can tweet us. We're the Apple Circle. Lots of ways to get in touch with us. Matt, it's a new week. How you doing? How's that Mac Studio and Studio Display holding up now, a little over a week later?
Yeah, it's going great. We're finally reaching, this is the, the third week after the announcement, or maybe it hasn't been a month? No, but we're reaching a month basically.
Couple weeks.
And this is when we start getting back into the lull and things are not as exciting anymore. But hey, it's holding up well. I still love the display, even though people still seem to think it's too expensive. I'm kind of over the Mac Studio. I don't really need it since I have the MacBook Pro. We've talked about that many times. First, before we get into all the Apple stuff, I figured we'd answer this one question that, it's a little more behind the scenes for you guys that watch, which you definitely should be. If you didn't know, if you're listening to this in your ears only through your podcast platform, well, there's also a video version of this, which is over on YouTube. Just search the Apple Circle podcast on YouTube. You'll find all the videos. We do the full episode, and then we cut it up into a few different clips throughout the week. I know some of you hate that we do that, but hey, that's how you do it on YouTube, okay? It really works. But we got a question over there from Juan Palmero. He says, great show. Thank you. Quality of video is good. Thank you. Would love it if you could share what kind of camera you guys are using. And funny enough, we both use basically the same setup, and that's just coincidental. Yep. We didn't plan that or anything, but we're using the Canon R6, which is the latest of the mirrorless cameras from Canon. I'm using a 24-70 Sigma lens. I think I'm going to guess you're using a 24-105. What are you using for a lens?
Yep. 24, 105, f4,
Yep. So, we both have basically the same setup. And then we got I'm sure we have very similar setups in terms of lighting too. I've got a huge softbox. Mine, I don't know how big yours is, but mine is, I'm squinting because I can't look directly in the light. I'm trying to measure it with my eyes. I'm pretty sure it's 84 inches or something. It's huge. I don't know how big yours is, but that's how we get this nice soft light. But that's pretty basic. That's what we're using. And then for our mics, we are both using this mic that I cannot remember the name of, but I know Robert.
Rode Procaster. Rode Procaster. Not to be confused with the board, which is the Rodecaster Pro.
Yeah, okay. Rode Procaster mic, which, they're great. These are great mics that we've had for a while. And then I'm recording into a Mix Pre, and you still going into the Scarlett?
I still have the Scarlett. I still am one day going to get rid of this audio interface because it's the tried and true. I think it's $100 on Amazon. Everybody used it, but I feel like I've outgrown it almost at this point. So I'm looking at an audio recorder. And Matt, now I'm curious for my own, just out of my own curiosity, what light are you using?
So I'm using the Aperture Amaran 200D, I believe they call it. So the Amaran is the cheaper of the Aperture lights. They have the Lightstorm series, which is their, Aperture in general. I don't think they really call it. The naming is kind of confusing when you get into these lights, but basically it's a cheaper version, but still very bright. So this is if you know anything about Aperture products, this is the equivalent of a 300D from the Aperture line, but it's only $200, maybe 300, something like that. It's way cheaper than the original light. So highly recommend this light.
I still want to get one of those. I'm using, because I needed a sort of a bigger light because I shoot a lot of the Apple Circle B-roll here. So I have, which you mentioned, the 300D Mark 1 or 2. I'm not sure which one this is. The 2, and first off, let me apologize. The lighting setup, I'm not happy with this whole setup ever since my office became a nursery. So I'm planning to redo this. We're moving soon, so I'll redo this. But I've got that. I've got a grid on there to sort of diffuse the light a little bit. And then I'm actually using the camera behind a teleprompter pane of glass now, but I don't have anything on there, so I'm just staring. One of these days, I want to get Matt's live video feed up there so I can kind of seem like I'm having a face-to-face conversation with him.
We got to try that.
But I got that, and then we should mention, I guess, we're not recording onto the camera itself. We're using
good point.
the Atomos Ninja 5, an external recorder. We just record 1080p just because it's a podcast, 1080p 60 file sizes.
Well,
are,
and what's great about the Atomos is it allows you record in ProRes, which you can't do natively on the R6. And what that lets you do is use the encoder that's built into the M1 Max that we have in our MacBook Pro, which means we can export this entire 1 hour-ish, episode in about 10 minutes. So, and that's with some basic color correction and the audio, linking the audio and the video file. So 10 minutes, when on Intel, that took me, honestly, an hour. Every week it was an hour.
It was, and it was not only that, but it was like an hour, 45 minutes of you cannot use anything else on your computer.
Exactly.
You got to just do it and walk away with this. I can have that export going and still be in Photoshop or doing something else. I guess we've talked about this many times, but you cannot overstate the power of Apple Silicon. And I think Tyler Stallman did a good video, which was the one that I wanted to see, which was an M1 Max versus M1 Ultra. It was an M1 Max MacBook Pro versus an M1 Ultra Mac Studio versus an Intel Mac. And this summary of that video is that the difference between an M1 Max and an M1 Ultra is seconds on most things, maybe 30 seconds, where the difference between Apple Silicon and Intel is just it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yep. So that's basically our setup. We love these new computers that enable us to use all these other things, and it works out. So thanks for asking that question. That's what we use, and I haven't changed my setup in a while in the background. That's probably going to happen pretty soon here. That's my favorite thing to do. But all this stuff is that's what it is. All right, should we get into some of the news? What should we start with? Actually, you know what? Let's go straight into another question. This one is from Rebecca, which is on the hotline, which you mentioned up front. So be sure to text or call that if you have any questions. But they say, I watch your Apple Circle podcast every week on YouTube and love it. Thank you very much. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on when the next Apple event will be. Again, that's from Rebecca. Thank you very much for that question. But next Apple event. Like I said, we're kind of in that lull about a month from the last Apple event. Looking forward to what's coming. So what do you think? When's the next Apple event going to be?
Well, if I was optimistic and I was very kind of crazy with my predictions, I would say something in May because, Mark Gurman sort of alluded to that. But most likely, if history has taught us anything, it's going to be June, WWDC. That will be early June. And I'm actually surprised because, actually, I don't know. So the day we're recording this is March 29th.
Yep.
And we expect to see WWDC invites, if Apple follows the trend, before the end of March. So by the time this podcast goes out, we've either gotten invites or not. So I would expect early June, as always, Apple does WWDC. Though, interestingly enough, I think it was Sam at Apple Track citing John Prosser, who said that maybe it's in person this year, which that would be an interesting turn because I would peg Apple as a more conservative company, not wanting to get in the news for any kind of health-related outbreak. So maybe it's in person, but I do think that whether it's in person or it's online, you can obviously stream it online. And I think it's a great resource for developers. As us non-developers and just enthusiasts, I think that you get basically the same experience by just watching it online. And that'll be where we see a number of things at that event. So Matt, walk us through what we should see at WWDC. What's sort of the thing we see every year and what could be different in 2022?
Yeah, so the thing we see every year, obviously, is software. WWDC, it's for developers. They work on the software. So iOS 16, I would expect that. iPadOS 16, I would expect that. watchOS, tvOS. What am I missing? macOS, obviously. And what are we going to see from those updates? Now, that is a completely different question. Who knows? I mean, honestly, we rarely get updates or leaks from what we are expecting to see from this new software, and that's really hasn't changed this year. I mean, obviously, we're still a few months away from when WWDC will be taking place, so there's still room for those leaks to happen, but we often don't get much. The last big update we got for iOS was when we got widget support, and since then, I mean, not much of an update since then, so I don't know. I'm hoping for something. The only thing I think that they would do that people really want is let you put apps anywhere on the home screen instead of just the typical grid. That's the only thing I could think that people are asking for. Other than that, I'm not really sure. Now, that's iOS. iPadOS, on the other hand, that's a whole different story. I mean, we say this every time we talk about the iPad, but we hope this is the year that iPadOS finally becomes what it could and probably should be. But what do you think? Do you think we will see that this year? Or what else do you think we should see for software?
Well, every year there's leaks that the iPad's going to get a big update. We're going to get Final Cut Pro on the iPad. And there was, I think we talked about it last week, there were some recent leaks that was also the case this year. But we just don't know. It makes so much sense for Apple to unlock more capability on iPadOS, especially with the M1 chip inside. We'd also heard rumors that maybe Apple could do some kind of I don't know if it was like a multi-window mode, but it was some way to sort of run apps side by side. Something would be nice. But like you mentioned, we really don't get a lot of leaks, so I don't really know in terms of what I'd want to see in iOS 16. I don't know. I guess I kind of sit back and just sort of let Apple tell me what I want. And we got widgets, which is nice. We got some more customization there. Something I was curious about that I don't think Apple will do this, but they could do this, is that, we had heard those rumors for an always-on display with the iPhone 13, that because Apple has ProMotion, there's LTPO backplane stuff in there, which does allow for a always-on display. Do you think there is any chance in the world that because the hardware is there, Apple with iOS 16 is like, oh, by the way, for all those phones that have the hardware, we're enabling a new feature called Always On Display that'll show you little, trinkets of information at a glance. I think it's a pipe dream, but I do think it's interesting that there is some hardware there that maybe iOS 16 could unlock. I don't know if it's reverse wireless charging. I don't know if it's always on display, but it would be cool to see Apple maybe lean into some of the areas that they've sort of really kept constrained for so long and sort of unlock new things there. I don't know. Do you have any wishes you'd like to see with iOS 16? Because I just kind of, I not even in that zone. So
I know.
And
I
there's
always
been no
forget
leaks.
that
I don't even
it's
know
a
what to
thing.
expect.
Yeah. No, in terms of the always on display, I think maybe it's possible we get that in iOS 16, but not for the current phones, and that they announce it with the iPhone 14. Like we said, last week, the rumors for this iPhone 14 have basically fallen apart, and now it's pretty much the same thing we have now, just with the updated camera. And you even said, I hadn't read this, but that John Prosser kind of scaled things back a little bit and said maybe his initial predictions were wrong. Maybe they're a little ahead, which is kind of what we predicted last week as well, that maybe this is actually the iPhone 14, iPhone 15, which we were getting the leaks of. Seems like the iPhone 14 is not that exciting, but one thing they could do is add the always on display, which technically would be iOS 16, but they wouldn't announce it until the new phone. I could see that maybe happening. The only thing I think it wouldn't happen with the 13 that we have now is because the LTPO display that's in there only goes down to 10 hertz instead of the 1 of, I believe, the iPad Pro. Or, sorry, what am I thinking of? Not the iPad Pro. Something goes down to 1 hertz. I can't remember.
Apple Watch, probably.
Yeah. Oh, that's what it is. The Apple Watch. Yeah, the Apple Watch goes down to 1 hertz, which is why they have the always on display, because it basically doesn't use any battery life. If it goes to 10 hertz, I'm sure it's still not that crazy in terms of battery life consumption, but I could see that being another thing that they update with the iPhone 14 is now it goes down to 1 hertz and we have the always on display. But I mean, who knows? That's a cool feature. I would like to see that. In terms of what else I would like to see, I mean, like I said, the moving anything on the home screen would be nice. But I mean, really, that's about it. I would love to see more camera features, updates to cinematic mode, maybe bring that to 4K, that kind of stuff. But we probably won't see any of that until the next iPhone comes out. That's kind of the thing with iOS is they don't really do much, and the exciting stuff comes with the new iPhone. And that's probably not going to be any different this year. I mean, I don't really care about having a redesign, but it has been years at this point that we haven't had like a major redesign. So maybe they would do that, but I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. My predictions are very, very small.
There's always a big question too on whether is there enough in the iOS software update to get you to do the beta or to stay off, because the beta is always a whole can of worms. And maybe we will do like a pre-WWDC episode. We should explain before everybody jumps on it, here's how to get the beta if you want it. Because the goal, what you got to do is be registered and ready to go, so when the beta drops, you can get it. So maybe we'll save that for another day. But yeah, like you, Matt, I don't know what they could do with iOS. So it'd just be sort of nice to see some kind of change. I guess a little more exciting than that is hardware. What hardware could we see at WWDC? And there are a couple of different possibilities I think we'll get into in a second. There are some iPad Pro rumors, but not for the summer, probably the fall. So don't expect an iPad Pro update. Maybe a MacBook Air, though that's also looking like it's going to be at the end of the year, if not next year. The only two things I can think of would be, because also iMac Pro, which would make sense, that seems to be delayed till 2023. It could be maybe a sneak peek at the Mac Pro. Maybe we see some kind of sneak peek at the Mac Pro, though if you believe Mark Gurman, he says that's going to be on the M2 architecture, which probably won't be ready, so that might be next year too, so that looks less likely. And then the VR headset, which we've been saying all along, Apple should do a good chunk of time at WWDC focusing solely on this mixed reality headset, the software, how it works. I think there's a chance we see that. I'm not sure at this point if it's when it's going to launch, but I think it makes so much sense at that event. That is when we see at least a glimpse of how it works. Give me like 10 minutes of how it works, and that's enough. But I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see any hardware at WWDC, just because it seems like a lot of the stuff we were expecting to see sort of got bumped down a bit till the fall. So am I missing anything, Matt? Anything you think we could see announced and or launched in June?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, like you said, all the things that we were kind of expecting have now been bumped in one way, shape, or form. But the software, which is always announced and comes out later, that they don't really have to rush about. And then the AR headset, I mean, they could release that in 2023 and still talk about it this year, and it would still, be fine. Like, no one would care. We're not expecting it to be released like a month later. We're expecting this to just be a sneak peek. Get the developers on board. Here's what we're working on. Let's get your apps ready. We're not quite ready yet, but we want to make sure that this is really killer out of the gate. So developers need to start working. I could see that all happening for sure. But I just don't know if that'll actually happen. Like, it does, the AR mixed reality headset just still doesn't make much sense to me. Like, I don't really believe it. Like, I know they're working on it, obviously, but I just don't believe that it's that close to being out, because maybe it's just because I'm too jaded from the products that exist now in terms of like VR headsets and AR glasses and things like that. Like, it just doesn't seem Apple quality at this point, and I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously it's coming at some point. It just doesn't feel quite right. So I would not be surprised if they hold it all until next year. But who knows? I mean, I would love to see it though. That would be great.
So first week of June is WWDC. That should be sort of exciting.
Yep.
I think that's pretty much it for the next Apple event. I mean, obviously we're going to get an event in the fall. That'll be iPhone and Apple Watch, but probably just something in June. And then again, like Matt mentioned in the beginning, in the lull, we're going to be in the lull in the summer until the fall, when things should pick up once again with maybe an event or two, especially if Apple has a lot of Macs to release. Wouldn't be surprised if we do another September-October combo, or maybe a September-November thing. Not sure how it's going to play out, but that's what I'd expect. Another question for you, Matt. In the news, Apple TV Plus, first streaming service to win Best Picture at the Oscars with Coda. Couple of questions here is, one, have you seen that? Because I have not. Did you watch the movie?
No, I have no idea what that even is, honestly.
I don't know either. I feel so bad. And the other thing that's interesting, and I'm not in the film TV world, so I can't comment on this, but I did see, there's a lot of controversy because, yes, Coda won, and that is good because Apple TV Plus was the first, streaming service to get Best Picture. Very cool. Though, did Netflix not get a Best Picture before? I thought, was it Roma Netflix? I thought so too. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Whatever the case may be. Apple TV Plus has gotten some accolades, but some are critical, saying, well, that film was just already done and Apple bought the distribution rights to it. So does that mean Apple had a hit with TV Plus, or does that mean that Apple, got lucky? That was not an Apple original program, which sort of, I don't know one way or the other where that conversation goes. But what I am interested on is, sort of as we stand now in 2022, and as we have more rumors of Apple subscription services, which we'll get into, what is the state of Apple's subscription services now? And I think if my memory serves me well, it would be News Plus, Apple Arcade, Fitness Plus, Music, iCloud Plus, and TV Plus.
Too many pluses.
Am I missing something?
No.
6 services?
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah. I'm trying to
think.
We might be missing. Oh, Apple Music? Or did you say that?
I think I got that.
Okay.
And of course, you can bundle all this with Apple One, which I've not opted to do because of all those. The streaming or the services of Apple I use are I pay for iCloud storage with Family Plan, which is technically iCloud Plus. I have Apple TV Plus subscription, and that's it. I don't use Fitness Plus. I don't use anything else. And I think definitely there's a hierarchy of the services that are doing better than others. But before I get into that, Matt, what Apple services are you subscribed to, and why are you subscribed to those and not everything? Or are you subscribed to everything, or are you on Apple One and that's it?
No, I'm not on Apple One, surprisingly. Usually I'm the kind of person who just subscribes to everything, but not this time. I have iCloud storage, which is Plus. I think, yeah, I got 2 terabytes. I think that's what my plan is. Yeah, and I got that because I've been looking for a way to basically not have anything on my actual computer so that no matter which computer I go to, I just have everything at a glance whenever I need it. And iCloud seems to be the best way because it integrates right into files. I like it a little bit better than Google Docs or Google Drive, which we use Google Drive as well. But yeah, so that's why I have 2 terabytes there. And then I have Apple Music, which I like because of my AirPods Max. I like having the Dolby and the lossless audio, even though the lossless doesn't even work with AirPods Max, but hey, that's just me. And you know, I actually use that pretty often. And then that's it. Yeah, I think we're or what's the Apple TV. I have Apple TV Plus, but I've never actually paid for Apple TV Plus, I don't think, because I think I got some other promotion that gave it to me for free.
I'm still on like the 3-month trial too. I signed up and then I was on it because they basically gave it away forever, and then it ended, and then I didn't pay for it, and then you could get like a 3-month thing through Target. So I got my wife on there, so I'm using hers. I'm trying to see, and here's what's funny too is I love Apple for so many reasons, but I also hate them because I was just looking right now. Their iCloud storage plans are criminal because they make you pay for one.
Yeah.
Because if anyone who's done any tech support for their family members knows that
that's always
the
first
beauty
thing
of iCloud is that it's perfect for anyone because it backs up contacts, calendars, photos. Big thing is photos. Everybody's always curious about that. It just backs it up. So if you get a new phone, that's just the easiest way to do it. And all my family members, I'm like, you got to pony up the 99 cents a month because this is just the way to go. It's easier. Don't have to worry about any backup solution, syncing it. Just do it this way. So basically, if you have any kind of modern phone and you use your phone at all, you're going to go over the free 5 gigs. So it's like everybody's paying at least $1 for iCloud. But what's funny is they're not really usable tiers. They're sort of tiers positioned to get you to go to the next tier. So there's a 5 gig free tier. Then there's 50 gigs, which I feel like is way too much because I think if they made the free tier 25 gigs, it would be more than enough, but they're never going to do that. So you go from 5 to 50, which is huge. Then you go from 50 to 200 gigs, which is again a huge jump. And then 200 gigs to 2 terabytes. It's like for me with my wife, we're on a family plan so we can share the storage. We have 400 gigs is it 400 gigs we're using right now? Like 400 gigs of storage we're using between the two of us, which is all our photos and stuff like that. A 500 gig plan would be perfect. A 1 terabyte plan would be even better. But of course, they don't offer that. So if you go over 200 gigs, you're automatically bumped to 2 terabytes, which is just kind of stupid. So I love Apple, but their iCloud Drive, whatever, the iCloud storage plans are just criminally insane.
Yeah. And it's like every time that you got to do that family tech support, that's always the issue. It's like you just got to buy the next tier. That's always the issue. Like it'll solve everything if you just buy the next tier.
I will say it is a pain, but it is so worth it for peace of mind. Like I know that
it's definitely worth it.
In my family, I give it to him like, look, your phone could get destroyed tomorrow. It could get, dropped in the ocean, run over by a car. Your stuff's safe because it's backed up through iCloud. Just it's worth the buck or whatever it is. Do a family plan. I will say that as annoying as it is, it's not necessary, but it's highly recommended if you want to have any ease of use with your phone. So we got that. TV Plus. So we're both using TV Plus. I started the only TV Plus show I've watched recently I started the WeWork one. Is it We Crashed? Is that the name of the show? Like watch one episode. It's okay. But have you watched, I guess to that end, are you watching any TV Plus shows now?
Absolutely not. I haven't even looked at their catalog, and I don't even know how long. I'm looking it up right now just so I could see what shows are even out right now. But no, the last one I watched was season 2 of The Morning Show, and I watched that many months after it came out, which it was not that long ago that I watched that show. But yeah, no.
So now is the time for you to unsubscribe from TV Plus. I mean,
yeah,
Apple has taken a quality over quantity approach. And we have discussed this at length, so I don't think we have to get into it in this one, but Matt and I have always talked about who Apple could buy or why they should buy someone to buy a back catalog. Apple TV Plus needs a back catalog to compete. Well, they don't have to have it, but it would be better. Apple's approach is, well, we're going to have a small curated collection of stuff that is available to stream. For $5 a month, I think it's worthwhile for a lot of things, especially if you like haven't watched anything. For $5, pay for a month or a couple months and just binge a lot of stuff, because there is some good stuff on there. But it's like once you go through it, people are unsubscribing, which is why their churn rate is so high, because there really isn't a lot there to keep people on, like Netflix or HBO Max. It has, you know, this huge back catalog and this ever-expanding catalog of stuff. Apple is sort of bottlenecked by their own decisions to work with very limited production companies and sort of either buy some distribution rights to things or do their own originals. They're kind of bottlenecked by how fast they can buy things or how fast they can produce things on their own, which is why I feel like a lot of people are just buying it or subscribing for a few months and unsubscribing, because there's not a whole lot they're always changing.
Yeah, but you know, in a way, their strategy seems to be working a little bit. I was trying to look up the numbers exactly, but I heard something about that they're actually catching up to HBO in terms of subscribers and, you know, how they're doing. And, you know, like you kind of said, they're very much doing a, you know, what's the word? What's that one story? The tortoise and the hare or whatever. The tortoise just keeps going and eventually wins the race. And it seems like maybe that is working. I mean, it might take a lot longer to get there. Their quality is very good. Like there's no doubt about that. Like the quality is great. Everyone loved Ted Lasso. They have these, you know, breakout shows every once in a while that people really seem to love and kind of hit the zeitgeist. But personally, I just don't really care. We just started watching The Office again. It's like, there you go. That's all I need. Like, I don't really care about, unless it's a show that really speaks to me, then I'm just not that kind of person. But I'm also I'm not the demographic here. I don't really watch TV that much. But yeah, it's interesting to see how this is going to play out long term, because in the beginning, it definitely seemed like, I mean, this is not worth even $5, which in the grand scheme of all the other streaming platforms, $5 is not that much. But it definitely did not seem worth it. But now that they're adding more and more things and, you know, getting recognition through the Oscars and that kind of thing, I mean, maybe their strategy is going to work.
I guess just some context here, and excuse the video version of this as I bring my mic over. So Apple TV Plus, as of September, 20 million subscribers. Paid, well, they don't say paid, but 20 million subscribers. Peacock, NBC Universal's platform, had a total of 24 million, though 9 million of those were paid. But still, Apple was giving away a lot of free trials, so it's smaller, you know, comparatively to Peacock. Amazon Prime had 175 million members. I mean, Disney Plus had 118. So, I mean, Apple is in a very, very, very small category of streaming services. And again, remember that, well, I don't know if any of the original people who got those free trials are still on there anymore, but I don't know I gotta see what that number is these days, because now it's really, if you're on there, you either have a limited free trial or you're paying for it, because a lot of those initial sign-up offers are sort of invalid anymore, and you can't get it for free like you used to.
I would say a lot of the people that got the free trial are still on it, only because they forgot that they had a free trial. Since the free trial was it was a year, right?
Oh, I think it was over a year. It was like, wasn't like 6 months and it was a year? I think it was like a year.
I think if you bought a product, if you bought a brand new product, it came with a year of Apple TV Plus.
Right.
So after a year, you're going to forget that you're not paying for this. And then it's $5 and you'll be like, whatever, $5. I think a lot of the people that got the free trial are still on it. And I was looking at the percentage here, very small percentage, but like we said, catching up to HBO Max. So 5.6% of the share or streaming market, and that's compared to 7% from HBO Max. Wow. Whereas the next one on top of that is Disney Plus, which is 17.6%. Well, so like that's a huge difference.
If someone forced me to either do HBO Max or Apple TV Plus, I'd 100 times out of 100 go with HBO Max, because the back catalogs are great. They got Friends, they got all the they got Sopranos, they got it's that back catalog. And Apple, like you said, Apple TV Plus, they will have a hit show. Like, I'm sure there's a big spike when Ted Lasso comes out and they get people there, and then just people watch what they watch and then they're off of it, which I just think, I don't know. Eventually, with the tortoise and the hare scenario, Apple will build a good enough back catalog. There's a good chunk of stuff to watch, but as of now, I think it's still a hard value proposition for Apple to sell to new customers, and I just don't know what they do. I mean, luckily they've got the money to burn, they've got time on their side, so they can just sort of let this keep going. But I still wonder why they entered this space, and I'm wondering what benefit do they get. I guess, to the Oscars thing, they get some accolades, but is this a business they really... I guess here's a better question. How much are they spending and how much are they making on this? This has got to be a loss leader for them. They got to be spending way more than they're making.
It's got to be.
So,
yeah. I mean, I guess, I think the reason why they should have some kind of back catalog that they just buy is, I was just trying to think of it like, okay, sure, Ted Lasso comes out, you binge the season, you're done, right? But if you have something like Friends or The Office or Parks and Rec or something like that, not only do you have the season that you can binge, you have like 9 seasons you can binge. Mm-hmm. So that's, I mean, even if you watch it back to back, you're still there for quite a while. And then those are more nostalgic than anything. So people go back and continue watching them. I thought I saw something, I never actually confirmed this, but I heard it somewhere that The Office is still the #1 show on TV, even though it's not on TV. In terms of viewership. I don't know if that's true, but I'm pretty sure.
Did you say you're rewatching it?
Yeah, we just started it.
I did too. You know what? And Peacock, they suck you in because they'll give you like 5 seasons for free. And they're like, oh, you're made it this far, might as well pay. So I'm like, I paid the $5 just so I could keep watching. And then I got to the part where like it kind of goes downhill. But anyways, that's also another strategy where they give you a pretty good amount for free and they hook you in and then they get you to pay. So I will say, Matt, okay, I'm going to get off on a very weird tangent, but I got to ask you, is the Peacock app, do you use it on Apple TV Plus or Apple TV, the box?
Yeah.
Is the audio out of sync for you? Because I swear everything is out of sync on that app.
No, it's fine.
Oh, so I don't know. Maybe it's just me because the box, whether I use the built-in speakers of the TV, whether I use the sound bar, it's out of sync and it's driving me nuts.
That's weird. I definitely don't have that issue.
So anyways, tangent over. So we got TV Plus. I feel like Apple Music, that is a service that's really grown into its own thing. I feel like there's a good amount of people on the service. It's not as big as Spotify, but it's got its own fan base. People are using it. People like it. It offers some unique services that others don't. Also, speaking of back catalogs, they've got a crazy catalog. Their Apple really, with the iPod, made its mark in the music industry, really revolutionized the music industry. So they've got I feel like they've got a lot of sway there with artists who release things exclusively on there and with different distribution houses and stuff. So Apple Music is great. I just cancel because I just don't need 2 streaming services. But I like Apple Music a lot. I mean, it's good.
Yeah. No, and what's interesting is I feel like Apple kind of missed the mark a little bit, not on Apple Music. I think Apple Music is great, but if we look at what Spotify is doing, they're really pushing for podcasts. But Apple, who basically started podcasts, they're kind of just leaving it be. I mean, they're trying, but the podcast app kind of sucks and nobody really likes it. And yeah, they did like the subscription thing, but I've never heard anything about it. Like nobody, it's not popular.
And that's what's so weird is that Apple was the podcast pioneer. You got podcasts through iTunes. That was like the first thing. And that was like back in like 2005, 2006, like that. They were so ahead on this and they just sort of dropped the ball. Then Spotify swooped in. And if anyone could compete with Spotify with bags of money, it's Apple.
Exactly.
So I don't know. Did Apple ever buy a podcast production company? I feel like they did, didn't they? Or am I crazy?
Let me look that up.
So I don't know if they ever did, but I definitely agree with Matt. They had an advantage that they don't. And I haven't used Apple Music all that much as of late, but I do feel like there is definitely a fragmentation between the podcast app and the music app. What Spotify has proven is that you should have it in one app for better or worse. So maybe there's a better way that Apple could promote podcasts within the music app. I don't know what their strategy could be, but they were so early on that, and now it seems like the lead has gone to Spotify.
Yeah, it looks like they tried to possibly buy, or there was talks at least to buy Wondery, which is a very big podcast network. They've done a lot of the very popular shows, but I don't think that ever actually happened. They're just talking about it. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff that Apple could have done, similar to what they did. I don't know, but I'm trying to think of like how they would do it. Seems like Apple would kind of be the person who would want to control everything like they do with Apple TV Plus. So if they wanted to do some kind of podcast thing, they'd like hire people to do podcasts, and that just wouldn't work, I don't think. Like podcasts are so natural and what's the word, like it really comes down to the personality of the people, and you have to like build that relationship. That if you just hire someone to do a podcast, it wouldn't work. But that's the only way I would see Apple doing it. Like, I don't think they would buy people, or at the very least, if they bought rights to someone's podcast, they would put very strict restrictions on what they could and couldn't do. And then at that point, it's like,
Well, that's the thing too, is, with TV Plus, many were surprised that Apple had shows with nudity.
Yeah, that was very surprising.
With, mature content, violence, stuff like that, mature themes. But, I think that's a good thing. And also sort of Apple can control that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like there's not going to be a PR and like, oh my gosh, in this episode there was something, Apple, everybody, I'm sure there's a ton of executives who screen all the shows and all the scripts and everything, so they know what they're getting themselves into. With a podcast, that world is different, where Apple could somehow get some bad PR because of a podcast host they have. That is not a risk Apple, I think, is willing to take. So their podcast would either have to be like very like story driven, like those highly produced podcasts, which I don't even know if that might be a little too much liability for them, or they just sort of stay out of the game altogether and they sort of do what they've done, which I think is allow podcasters to sort of earn revenue. It's tough because it's a double-edged sword no matter which way you go.
Yeah, and you know what, I'm trying to think back of like when I stopped caring that Apple was the podcast people and when I just got into podcasts, and I'm thinking it's when they broke out the podcast app. Like when the podcast app was its own thing, and I guess maybe it's kind of been like that for a long time. No, like I'm trying to think of when they broke it out onto its own app when it wasn't just part of like the music app.
Oh, I remember when I used to go into iTunes to subscribe to podcasts.
Exactly.
I used to watch or Dignation. That was a really
Dignation. That's what got me into all of this stuff. Oh yeah, great. I still watch those every once in a while.
I had my old Apple. Matt, we're too similar.
I know.
I feel like that's a very obscure thing that not a lot of people know about Dignation. But I remember getting like the original Puck Apple TV, and then you could stream stuff through iTunes. I download the Dignation episodes on my Mac, and then I stream it to my Apple TV so I can watch it. And it used to be like, I think a lot of people don't realize that podcasts, and this is a different discussion, podcasts were a very niche thing. If you were in podcasts, it was weird.
That was weird.
What's that? No one knew. And now it's like, I feel like, it's like a influencer. Oh, I'm a podcaster. And, people just, oh, it's cool. It's like a YouTube.
It's like part of it, yeah.
I feel like podcasting is, I don't mean to diss podcasters, but I feel like it's so much easier than doing YouTube.
Oh, it's so much easier.
I am not an audio engineer, but I would. It's way easier for me to sit down and do this than it would be to do a whole video. So,
whether or not it's going to be successful, that's a whole different question. But actually doing it is way easier.
Can you do is there like you can't do thumbnails? Is there clickbait in the podcast world? Is there
we kind of
do dislike ratio? Yeah, kind of. We like to take our YouTube expertise and put it on all platforms. Hey, people. The statistics back it up. People will click on a more.
It's true.
Not
Unfortunately,
clickbait,
it's true.
Sensational. Yeah. So there's the music app, Fitness Plus. I tried the free trial, gave up on it. I completely forgot Apple still does that, but they still do Fitness Plus. Are you using that at all? Or
no, we have the Peloton. No, I've never actually even tried it. I don't think. We have Peloton, so it's basically all the same stuff, but we also have the bike, even though we got the bike and then like a few months later, they're like going out of business and stuff. So of course that's just my luck, but no, everything still works. So yeah, that's what we're using.
Other services I'm forgetting. I don't personally. News, nope. Arcade, nope. I never even did the 3-month free trial.
It's still every once in a while ask me, do you want to do the arcade trial? And I don't even care to try the trial. Like
I feel like those are probably the two, and I don't know inside of Apple, but if I had to guess, 2 weakest services, News Plus and Arcade. I'd say probably Arcade worse than News. I don't know.
No, I think Arcade is better than News.
You think so?
Yeah, because I just have heard News. People have been dropping News, like services, like inside of the app, have been dropping their platform from News. Whereas I've
heard nothing good about it. No one says I love News Plus. I love Arcade. Those if Apple had to cut things, I think they cut it. I feel bad because I feel like there's so many passionate people at Apple, like huge teams working on those two things, and I don't know what Apple's measurement for success is, but I can't imagine they are on the trajectory they should be, just from a outsider's perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know a ton of people that play games on their phones, but I don't know anyone that uses Arcade to do that. Like, I mean, maybe I just don't talk to enough people about games on their phone, but it just doesn't feel great. I mean, from what I've seen from Arcade, it does have very high quality games. It's nice that you don't have any ads or anything like that. You don't have to do the pay to play kind of thing. So that is good. I'm glad that exists. I just don't really care. I'm definitely not the demographic for Arcade. I don't play games on my phone like at all. But even still, I never even hear about it. It's not like a thing that anyone ever talks about. I
guess the last Apple service I forgot to mention, then we'll get into the rumor on this. Apple Card.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Technically a service.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever should have got the Apple Card because I feel like it's really useless. I got the Apple Card. I use it on my iPhone. I never really use the physical card, but I do use it in the Wallet app. It's fine. I mean, you get cash back on Apple stuff. So I have all my Apple subscription stuff. Just go to it automatically. And is there anything to say about Apple Card? I mean,
no.
Would you recommend anybody get the Apple Card?
I mean, the only reason I could say to get it is if you are already going to finance something from Apple, like that's already what you're going to do, then yeah, use the Apple Card because then you get the 0% back, or not 0% back, but 0% financing on a lot of things. So that's the only reason I would say to start one. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I use the Apple Card for Apple stuff, but that's about it. Other than that, we have we have a Chase that we use for everything else because you get airline points and all that kind of stuff.
That's the thing is there's really no incentive for the Apple Card to use it daily because you get a little bit of Apple cash back. You get some stuff with the Apple Store. Then there's sometimes they have limited partners who get some cash back. But as a credit card, as credit card rewards go, it's fairly lacking.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still, that's one of those services that's kind of weird. I don't know why Apple is in that. I'm sure they make a ton of money from it, but I'm not sure what the goal there is.
Speaking of financing, there is a report from Mark Gurman that Apple is going to expand out their financing potentially to, it sort of sounds like an upgrade program for the Mac. So there's the iPhone upgrade program, which sort of you get on there, then you finance, you basically pay a year's worth of payments and you get the new one. This is a little different. It's a little confusing here. I think that this is not an upgrade program, but it's just financing for more Apple products. Because right now, if you want to finance an Apple product, you got to go through the Apple Card, kind of more traditional financing. This would be more like a subscription service for the product. So instead of, you're paying to own, this is sort of pay to lease it, and then you can, I guess, return it at any time maybe, and then get the new one. But you're not, as far as what I understand from this report, you are not paying down a balance. You're just paying for the opportunity to use it. Do you know, Matt, if that's right or not? It's a little confusing.
That's kind of what it sounds like, but yeah, it's so confusing to really know what it is. Hopefully, I mean, if that's the case, I'd be kind of down for that because, we upgrade. I mean, I'm sure the math equals out or does not benefit leasing it, but, we upgrade computers enough that it might be worth paying monthly for a much better system than buying something outright that is maybe not quite as expensive up front. So, I mean, we'd have to do the math on that, but I'd be interested to see that. The other thing that they're doing apparently is they're working on an iPhone rental service, which is kind of interesting. I didn't really look into the details of that, but seems like it's kind of like the upgrade plan. I wasn't really sure, kind of the same thing with the Mac thing. I wasn't really sure what the difference was between renting it and the upgrade plan. I guess that you just wouldn't be able to own it. That's kind of the difference, right?
Yeah, it seems like with the upgrade plan, there's, I guess, an expectation that you will upgrade after a certain amount of time. With this other stuff, it seems like you're just sort of leasing it. I'm sure there's going to be a 6-month, 12-month, or an indefinite amount of time. It's very confusing as of now, but it would be cool to walk into the Apple Store and be like, hey, instead of, and this is, the big thing with carriers did it, instead of spending $3,000 for the computer, pay $30 a month. And there you go. Walk out the door. You take it. It's probably like any other loan. You do a credit check, and if you're good, you're good. And there is something appealing to that. And, the flexibility would be really nice to have. And like you said, it would be cool, especially right now as Apple Silicon is changing so much to, okay, how about for 6 months, I'm going to get this MacBook Pro. Then I'm going to jump to Mac Studio. Then, okay, when the iMac Pro comes out, let's switch to that. That would be nice. So I'm sure the math evens out, and you're probably paying just about the same, though at the end you don't own it. You've got no equity to trade it in. Exactly. You're just, renting it. But for a lot of businesses, it makes sense. Could be cheaper than, buying it, and especially if you don't want to deal with the hassle that you don't have the cash down, just pay monthly and that's it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, mathematically, leasing never really makes sense, but it's more the upfront costs that you're negating there. So it's easier to get into a better device than you would if just buying it outright. I would be interested to see what the terms are there, and for our line of work, renting M1 Ultra Studio with a XDR display for I don't know what $150 a month. That's appealing.
The thing too. If you could rent the display and all that, I mean, and for us, it makes sense. I mean, we could jump to, swap computers out and test stuff. I mean, there's definitely something to be said about, maybe that's something that'd be actually a cool idea is if we could rent like a work computer for like shooting purposes, like we swap that out every couple months to try different things.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's definitely something interesting there. Should we go? I think that's it for services, right? Did we cover all of them?
Yeah. That's it. Next topic, Matt. What do you
Let's jump all the way to the fall, into the year. The last rumor that we heard from this week, which is from Mark Gurman again. He kind of maybe is going back on what he said earlier, but basically he's now saying that in the fall at some point we will see an updated iPad Pro with an M2 chip and MagSafe support, but no real redesign or anything. It's basically the same product with a new chip and MagSafe. Am I missing anything with that rumor? Is that basically what it sounds like?
That's it. And like we mentioned before, probably no mini LED in the 11-inch version, which makes it a less compelling product even more so now. Yep. I mean, and then you're gonna compare apples to apples here with the M1 iPad Air versus the M2 iPad Pro. I think that the big difference maker here has got to be iPad OS, and it's got to be some big update we see in June that comes out in the fall, and there's got to be something that M2 allows the iPad Pro, the newer ones, to do that you can't do in the Air. There's got to be something there to make it a compelling offer, because if it's just a newer M2 chip, what advantage, again, like every year, what advantage does that really give you over the older stuff, which is slightly faster, slightly more efficient, but really for most people, is not worth the upgrade?
Yeah, exactly. I made a video on my personal channel talking about Apple needs to make a case for the iPad Pro again. And basically I was saying it's not worth getting the iPad Pro. And I did get a few people saying the main reason why they did get the Pro is because the M2 has that 8 gigabytes of RAM. So for certain programs like Procreate, which have layers, they could do more layers. And it's like, okay, great. That's totally a real thing. That's a reason to get the iPad Pro. But really, that's the only reason we can think of. Out of all the comments, that was the only reason that made sense to spend the extra money, because of the processor, not because of other things, but because of the processor. That was the only thing, is the RAM having more RAM does make a difference. So yeah, what other compelling reason would there be without an update to the software? I don't see much else, other reason to get this new chip. The other question I have though is, are we going to see the M2 and the iPad first? That's kind of weird.
Well, that also leads us to an interesting discussion on, okay, so if M2 launches in the fall, what other M2 things do we see, and when do we see this? Because if iPad Pro launches in the fall, I don't think it would launch at the iPhone event, because that'd be too much, because you've got iPhone, you got Apple Watch. Usually, maybe that's the third thing, but I don't think so. Because
they'll do their own event, I think.
So assuming it's that, I think that we still hear about a new MacBook Air. I think that makes sense. We see MacBook Air M2, iPad Pro M2, and then maybe the base MacBook Pro M2, or maybe a Mac Mini M2. Yeah. There's a couple of things there we could do, but I think that it would make sense for Apple to do their own event with a couple of different M2 products. Their iPad Pro is one of them.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And it's basically an M2 event, and we're throwing it in all these different products. I guess the weird thing is that Mark Gurman, last week, basically said no M2 until 2023, which I don't know what happened there. I didn't actually read his report. I just saw the reports of the report. Did he explain what his reasoning there was?
I don't remember. I mean, there was a lot of controversy. I remember when there were first M2 leaks a few months ago, I remember there was a lot of debate on whether we'd see it in the spring or the fall, because it always seemed like there was some kind of bottleneck that we wouldn't see M2 stuff till the fall. And I don't know what happened behind the scenes. It sounds like there's some kind of chip issue where Apple is probably prioritizing, if they can only make certain silicon chips now, they've got to be prioritizing A15 and A16 for iPhone 14. So maybe the M2 stuff just got pushed on the back burner because there's such limited supply with existing inventory, or with these production houses that they're just prioritizing iPhone stuff first. But I have yet to see a good explanation or a good timeline as to when it's coming and why it's got delayed, because it seems like it's been all over the board.
Yeah, no, it's confusing. Hopefully we do see it, though, because these are all products that I would like to use and try. And if it means, I mean, honestly, well, here's the question. If for whatever reason the M2 isn't ready and these reports are wrong, or the initial reports are correct that it's going to be later, do you think we still see like the updated MacBook Air with just like an M1 chip in it? That seems kind of weird.
That's what Ming-Chi Kuo says. He says just M1. He says just that redesign, and that's it. Some colors, but no M2. So I could definitely see that as a possibility.
Yeah, but that's just weird. Like, so that would be what, 2 full years of no update once we actually get an M2, which I guess, global supply shortages, chip shortages, all that kind of stuff. It's understandable. It's not like this is all confusing why it's happening. It's just, it seems strange. I don't know. It seems kind of weird, especially with a completely new design. Well, I'll put it this way. If that is what happens, it definitely wasn't the initial plan. I think the M2 is supposed to be in this computer. They might have to settle for it not being an M2, though. But hopefully Mark Gurman is right, because if we do see an M2 in the iPad, there's no way we're not going to see it in a MacBook Air either. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I guess we still don't know, too, what Apple's silicon release cycle is.
Yeah,
is
no,
it
that's true.
A 2-year thing? Is it a 2.5-year thing? We don't know. So I think that if I had to make a guess, they probably wanted to launch M2 sooner than they are going to, but because we don't know the inner workings, we don't know any better. Maybe this was the plan all along, so we don't know.
Yeah, no, that's true. And then the other thing is, this is not fall related necessarily, but when do we see the Mac Pro? Because like we said, maybe we'll see it at WWDC, but their messaging around that was a little interesting, because they did tell us a Mac Pro with Apple Silicon is coming. They said that on stage, which it's kind of rare for Apple to mention upcoming products. But they also said that the M1 Ultra was the last chip in the M1 line, which implies that this new chip, which is supposed to be coming, I think, what was the rumor name? The Extreme? Was that the
M2
rumor name?
Extreme.
Yeah, but it would be M2, not M1 Extreme. So that's interesting. So that would imply it would come out later, probably next year.
Well, exactly. That's Gurman's thinking, is going to be M2 base, which if you believe that, then it would not be ready. We wouldn't see anything in June, so it'd probably be next year, right?
That's what you would think, but also the initial rumors back at the beginning of the year was that the MacBook Air was supposed to come out in the spring. So this could just be all messed up, right? Like, I mean, maybe the MacBook Air was supposed to come out in the spring. That's 18 months after the initial release, which was the rumored release cycle for the M1 chip, that the M2 would come out 18 months later. That's the life cycle. That comes out in the spring, and then everything else falls in line. It seems like everything just got messed up because of supply chain, but I kind of want to see that Mac Pro, because I'm thinking like $500 base, or not 500 would be great. $5,000 base for an M1 Ultra in the Mac Pro with hopefully some kind of upgradability. That seems like a great computer, and I'd like to see it sooner rather than later. Yeah.
I can't wait. It's going to be so cool. And it's a little disappointing that it seems like a lot of Apple's big 2022 ambitious plans probably got sidelined just a bit until next year. But I guess it sort of spreads out some of the excitement until sort of going into 2023, which means we should be getting a lot of cool stuff well into next year.
Yeah. That's also what we get, though. Every year, we always get too excited about these rumors, and then stuff just falls through. That's what we get.
Always. Matt, did we miss anything, or is that
no? I think that's it.
That's the news.
Well, I guess one last piece. We don't even have to talk about this very long because it's very boring, but figure we'd throw it in because it is news. Apple's cutting iPhone SE production by 20% because nobody cares about the iPhone SE, which is not a surprising thing at all. I did remember when it first came out, there was people saying like I'm trying to, it wasn't like a news report, but it was just people who worked at certain stores saying like these are flying off the shelf. I don't know if I buy that. Especially now that
I saw some reports floating around that like showed like the iPhone SE was like the 8th best phone, 5th best selling phone in somewhere. I mean, I have no doubt that it's a good selling phone.
I'm sure it's selling, yeah.
But it probably doesn't have a huge demand. So I don't know. We've also seen this before too, where Apple cuts demand of iPhone stuff all the time. So I wouldn't expect the iPhone SE to be flying off shelves, so maybe they are made too many. I mean, also just think that this is one they could probably ramp up and ramp down pretty quickly because it's the same chassis. It's just the A15s that have got those. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Mac Rumors had a video about it. You know, the iPhone SE is a bust. I haven't watched the video yet, but I would agree with the sentiment. It's just that this is it. It's not a huge design change. It's a good, cheap phone. but I can't imagine that the people who are on the market for this phone are buying it all at once. This is not the same crowd as the Pro, 13 Pro or 13 people. They're not buying it on launch weekend. This is one that you probably just make a big batch, and it sort of has a long tail on it, so to speak, that it probably gets sold bit by bit over time. It's not one with a huge spike and then it sort of level off. It probably is pretty fairly level throughout a 12-month period.
Yeah.
So to speak.
You know, I was just thinking this is kind of going along that. I've never seen the answer to this, and I'm sure the answer exists. I just haven't looked for it. But when they do like, okay, we're ramping down production, what does that mean? Does that mean like, okay, for like, let's say a week, instead of producing iPhones every week, we only do it like for 3 days? Or does it mean like they make the people on the production line make them slower?
That's a great question. I wish I was a logistical master.
I'm sure they just turn it off. I don't know if they can actually make it slower. But
I mean, I would assume that there is an output. There's probably, let's say, just because we're dumb and we're guessing here, like a high maximum output level, medium, low. I'm sure that like right before the new iPhone launches, they're at like maximum like 24 hours, like pumping those things out as fast as they can. Maybe there's like a different scale of output.
Maybe, yeah,
I would imagine that the output scale is back. So maybe, whatever that translates, maybe Apple, instead of ordering 30 million, is going to order 20 million or 25 million. I'm not sure how that works into the day-to-day. Maybe they just sort of dedicate less resources. Like instead of having, 10 lines in a factory, they're using 8 lines.
Or it could just be like, okay, it's cut by 20%. So maybe that means instead of 100 or maybe 1 million phones, it's 800,000 phones. So it's like at the end of the quarter, that's the quota they're reaching, but they make them at the same pace. Maybe it's something like that. Yeah. I don't know. That's just a question that popped in my head. I never really thought about how that works. Like, you just turn it off?
Does someone at Apple just send the email, say ramp down?
Yeah, exactly. And then it all just happens. Tim Cook, because that's what he used to do, right? So he just goes like,
he's got just a
shut
button
it down
in his office to what's my level today of the production line in overseas?
He's got a dial.
So
he just dials it up or down. But no, I think that is it for the week. That is all the news. Lots of interesting things going on in the Apple world. Hopefully we get, these rumors are really what's interesting, because every week it seems like they're changing. Mark Gurman last week said no M2 this year. Now he's saying M2 this year. iPhone 14 now it kind of sucks, but who knows? That might change later on in the year. But lots of things to look forward to in the hopefully near future. And like we kind of mentioned at the beginning, by the time you watch this, WWDC may be a thing. And if not, we will probably get that announcement very soon after this episode comes out, if it's not already out. So yeah, lots of cool things to get excited about.
As always, guys, leave us a comment. You can text or call the hotline, 949-354-3508. Or, as always, as well, in addition to all that, leave us a review in the Apple Podcast app. That greatly would help out the podcast, helps Apple sort of push it out to more new people. We'd appreciate it, so thank you so much in advance. As always, thank you guys for watching, listening. We'll see you right back here, same time, same place, for another episode of the Apple Circle Podcast.